Well, hello, good morning. Egunon guztioi. Welcome again to Nonick 2011. We hope you enjoyed the workshops. Did you? Were the workshops right? Okay. And we also hope that you enjoyed the dinner and the party yesterday. I know some of you didn't sleep much last night, so go on, animo. Well, yesterday was a very intense day at Nonick. But today we still have a couple of keynotes. And we also have to know the winners of the startup competition after counting your votes yesterday. Please remind to fill the evaluation form you have on your chairs so we can get your feedback and comments, as we'd like to improve your experience on future editions of Nonick. As an example, some of you probably would like to tell us that the workshops should be a bit longer, as you found them too short. So please let us know any comments you have about Nonick. That always helps us. Thank you. So let's start.
Let's start with the first keynote. MoBeppy, his blog about mobile technology, is one of the most established, focusing on this area. He is also a previous global chairman of the Mobile Marketing Association, a founder of Mobile Monday in Germany, an angel investor, and holds a lot of non-executive positions in mobile technology companies. Last but not least, his previous role was with AdMob, mobile advertising startup sold to Google. A warm welcome to Russel Buckley.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to add my own welcome to you all this morning on Saturday. I've got a presentation today which is I've called Tomorrow's World. And what I've tried to do is take some views of the future and mobile advertising in the short term, and then take a sort of long-term view of what the future might like, based on some of my experiences of going to Singularity in California last year. So hopefully there'll be something there for everybody. So let's start with a little view of how difficult it is sometimes to see where we are in history. This gentleman was called Harry Warner. He founded a very famous movie company called Warner Brothers, which is still around today. And he was called things like the founder of the talkies. He actually launched the very first talkie movie, The Jazz Singer, in 1926. So you'd have thought that he would know his industry really well, be able to take a very good view of everything that was happening, and given the historical context of where he was. But in fact, in 1925, the year before The Jazz Singer was launched, he actually came up with a quote of, "Who the hell wants to hear actors talk?" So if it's difficult for a giant of his industry to see where he is within the context of history in his industry, it's much more difficult for us today. And so I'm going to try and do that and give you a view on where we are. So the first point I want to make really is about the mobile itself. A lot of us are still using laptops today, but I would suggest that that's probably going to be a short-term experience, and I'll tell you why. It's because the mobile has consumed and killed more industries than any other industry I can think of. For those of you old enough to remember what this used to be a pager which predated mobile. It doesn't exist today. I don't know if anybody has ever bought a calculator in this room, but I wouldn't have imagine it would be very, very recent, because we use our mobiles for that today. The alarm clock industry is dying as an industry. People don't buy alarm clocks today. And in fact, I'm amazed that hotels still ask you the question, do you want an early morning alarm call this morning? Because everybody uses their mobiles. The PDA industry is dead. And indeed, far more camera phones are sold than proper cameras these days. Now, basically, when we look at technology, there are two types of people, and they'll argue very vociferously with each other, one of which is someone I call the convergionist, and he says, or she says, I've got one device and I want it to do everything. Isn't that fantastic? I need to carry one thing around and it does whatever I want it to do. And the other one is who I call the separatista, and he's very different. He says, hey, I've got something for everybody. I've got my MP3 player over here, and I've got my mobile over here, and I've got my camera over here, and they all do the job fantastically well, and I want to be like that. But in fact, the separatista is almost always wrong, and I'll explain why. This gentleman is a chap called Jim Richardson, and he's been a photographer for National Geographic for many, many years, sort of 25, 30 years. And I was lucky enough to be on a platform and speaking with him recently at the same event. And he takes sort of fantastic photographs, a lot of which are sort of Celtic influence. And he's worth looking up on his website to go and see some of the fantastic stuff he's done. But somebody asked him a question after this talk and said, you know, what's the best sort of camera? What camera should I get? And he made a very good point that the best camera is the one you have with you when you need to take a photograph. So you can have the most fantastic lens like this and everything, a fantastic camera in the world, but if you haven't got it with you when you want to take a photograph, it's no good. Therefore, the cheapest camera phone is the best camera in the world if you've got it on you. And that's why the convergionist rather than the separatista argument seems to make sense. So let's see what else the mobile phone is about to kill. It's about to kill the video camera. It's going to kill handheld gaming completely. It'll be a dead industry within a few years now. It's killing the landline everywhere in the world where mobile is prevalent, and indeed, you know, in emerging markets where they don't even have landlines, mobile has come first. And you know, there won't be any such thing as a landline, certainly to our children's generation. It certainly killed the standalone MP3 player, and one of the reasons when I was writing, like 5 years ago or so, 6 years ago, I actually predicted that Apple would be launching into the mobile phone business a long time before anybody else. And the reason why is because of this argument, because they had a very fantastic MP3 product, the iPod that we knew and loved, but Steve Jobs must have been able to look at that and say, well, actually, this fantastic new thing which we've done is going to be killed by the phone, therefore we have to go into the phone business, however difficult that might be. And obviously, they changed the phone business in doing so. And GPS. I mean, if you've got a standalone GPS company, you're in trouble. I think if anyone's working there, I'd really, really think about leaving your job and doing something which has got more of a future. The future, what else will happen? Mobile couponing. Since we actually wrote the program, one of my focuses in my world has been to actually look at where the growth areas has been, and I've actually started a full-time job in mobile couponing, the actual digital redemption element, where you can use your phone to redeem in physical retailers. So certainly I would bet my career and money on the fact that that's going to happen. Not that I'm necessarily going to win in that game, our company, but somebody's going to win in the mobile couponing game. Mobile health will become increasingly important. Translation, we can already see some of the Google products where you can actually have a conversation in real time with somebody through your phone, a bit like Douglas Adams's Babelfish, which he predicted so precisely. Become our keys. The mobile will also become our wallets, and again there'll be some big winners in this space as well. That's kind of the thing on more difficult to understand is that the mobile will also kill the PC. I've been writing for many years that the mobile will do to the PC what the PC did to the mainframe. That doesn't mean to say that in a few years' time there won't be any PCs. There will be some people who are quaint and old-fashioned and want to carry on using the PC. But vast majority of people, vast majority of time will be using their mobile for most of their digital interaction. What's kind of needed at the moment is the tools to be more efficient when you need to do that heavy lifting which the PC is so good at, whether that be typing, spreadsheets, editing photographs. You need a large screen. But this is something which Nokia launched a few years ago and were pretty much ahead of their time in predicting that you could just dock your phone into a keyboard and monitor and see it. And we see a more contemporary version here of using the iPad like that. So I think if we come to reconvene in 5 years' time, there's still quite a lot of laptops around here. I think you'll be very, very unusual and probably pretty old if you're still using a laptop by that point. It'll all be the post-PC era. What's that? Sorry, I was going to say, and the other thing is this, we talked a lot about augmented reality. This is a gentleman by the name of Werner Winger, who is a retired maths professor at San Diego University and a sci-fi writer. And he wrote a very influential book called Rainbow's End. And some of us have been talking already about the company Leia. This was the book, I suppose, which inspired the Leia people to go out and do start their company. because what he predicted was at some point in the future, and it's like about 10 years or so from now, we'll actually be all wearing contact lenses a little like this, where we'll be able to see 3 views of the world. So we'll be able to see the digital world if we want to, we'll be able to see the augmented reality world if we want to, and if we're really quaint and old-fashioned, we might want to see the real world as we see it today. So that's another example of a tool which will enable mobile to do what we need it to do in the future and replace PCs. So going on a bit to mobile advertising and how that's evolved, I want to sort of take you back to 1941 as an example of an evolution of media. This was the very, very first TV ad which was ever run in the States, as it happens, but it was the very first one in 1941. And the film doesn't actually exist anymore, but we have got this still photograph of it. And actually, we don't need the film because it was just a still photograph like this, which was shown on TV. This photograph was put up for 15 seconds in complete silence. And then somebody said, "America runs on Boulevard time." And then there was 5 more seconds of silence. And then it was back to the ball game, which was the time. And why that's important is because it shows how a medium develops. Basically, they took what they knew, which was a bit of radio and a bit of print, put them together and created a TV ad. And what they didn't understand at the time was that the TV ad could move, it could have color eventually, and work out into some of the great TV advertising we see today. And I want to compare that in terms of how mobile has developed, and mobile advertising has developed 10 years. It's evolved quite quickly. Back in 2000, we were just doing text messages, and that was the whole of mobile marketing. You could send somebody a text message, which sometimes kind of isn't actually very interesting to most advertisers. Messaging, is it? Right. Is that better? Yeah, okay. I'll use this then. So a few years later, we had color text messaging, otherwise known as MMS, and again, it required people to opt in and get color text messages, which had patchy response and didn't really get advertisers very excited. AdMob came around in about 2006, and what we did, first of all, was very similar to what I described as TV advertising in the beginning. We really took what's worked on the internet and put it on a mobile phone, and it works very well. We still use a lot of these sort of ads, but it was evolving very quickly after that. We started doing graphical banners. We started doing iPhone apps. We started doing video, which I'll show you an example of in a minute. We sold about that time our first $1 million advertising campaign. And we started moving into location. And the next phase, I guess, is augmented reality, which we were talking about in one of the groups earlier on, with some very fascinating examples and use cases. And I think the next phase is where I've said I've just started a company where we're actually using the mobile to issue coupons so you can take them into physical retailer, get discounts and special deals. So really, where TV took 70 or 80 years to get to where it did today, we've done the same in mobile in about 10 years. And I think it's a very good example of how quickly technology is evolving in comparison to what it used to do. And I'll come back to that theme in a while. So essentially, we've gone from this to something which these days looks like this, where you can see a banner ad at the top. You can click on it, it scrolls down. You can go through to a landing page. You can see how to get to your nearest store. You can see some more product information. You can do the viral element, showing it with a friend. And you can also watch the video on your screen and interact with the brand in that way. So you can see, again, how quickly everything's developed. Oh, got some sound. Okay, you get the picture. So mobile is pretty unique in that respect, in the sense it can do all three parts of marketing. It can build your brand, it can do customer retention, and it can also do customer acquisition. And again, that's why mobile is going to be so important, because it aligns commercial interests with technology ones, and it can do everything. As importantly, from a marketing point of view, the average spend through digital advertising at the moment is 15.4%. Through all products and categories. But the people who sell through physical retailers are only spending 2% of their budgets currently. And the reason why is because mobile coupons and being able to drive people into stores through mobile is missing. So we expect that to change very rapidly. The other thing about mobile is that price comparison, people are using it increasingly in store to compare prices, which scares retailers a lot. 10% of people are already comparing prices in store, so we're going to see a big retail revolution in the way mobile works. Loyalty will also move towards it, and we'll also get m-commerce. So that's how quickly mobile is changing, and I want to sort of change the pace now a little bit and talk less specifically about mobile and mobile advertising, and look at the big picture and what's coming next in the next 25 years or so. And as I say, this is based on my experiences at Singularity University I went to last year. So when new technology comes about, it tends to come about by business interests or led by technologists rather than necessarily we as society. In the UK, as an example, if you're walking through central London today, you're filmed about 70 times every day through CCTV cameras, and nobody asked us if we wanted to do that. It was just businesses deciding they were going to do it, and the technology was there to spy on us, and therefore it happened. It wasn't even debated in Parliament or among anybody else. It was just something which was introduced. There's also a secret network which the police have done, which actually reads people's number plates as they're going on motorways in the UK. And again, this wasn't a democratic thing. It was just something which they introduced for us. And one of the perhaps disadvantages, depending on who you are, of the cameras in phones is that we can now all take photographs of anybody we like, and that includes our friends, but it also includes celebrities. There have been several examples recently of celebrities having to cut short holidays, as an example, because people keep walking up to them and taking photographs of them. At the last Olympics in Beijing, there were secret microphones and video cameras in every single cab to spy on everybody. And again, this wasn't something which we agreed to, it was just something which happened. And obviously, with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, he's changing the definitions of privacy all the time, again, without really asking us, the users, if that's a good thing or a bad thing. With all these things, we never voted on this. We were never asked, no member of parliament, whether it be European or local, has ever said, do you want more technology to spy on us? It was never voted on in Parliament by those people who we voted for. And I think a lot of it is because politicians don't really understand, and they don't really understand how fast technology is changing. This is an example of the late Senator Ted Stevens, and he famously described the internet as a series of tubes, trying to show off that he knew exactly what he was talking about, and obviously misunderstanding and getting it completely wrong. So the politicians don't really understand the issues and can't have the debate either. So the Singularity, which is the next big change that's coming, again won't be debated perhaps until it's too late. And one of the things I always like to do is to try and talk to people and raise the level of debate so that we at least know what's going to happen and what the choices are ahead of us. Ray Kurzweil is the popularizer of the Singularity movement. And I'll explain to you what the Singularity is and give you some scenarios about what that might mean. Ray also founded the Singularity University, so this is his passion, and he tends to be very, very good at predicting the future. Time and time again, he's managed to do that. 25 years ago, he predicted to the nearest year when the first computer would win at chess against man. So he's that kind of long-term thinker. And his whole theory is that technology is growing exponentially. In order to understand exponential, you really need to understand this graph. But since I don't, I've got a better way of explaining what exponential growth is. Exponential growth basically means that something doubles every certain time period. In technology, that means that it's doubling every year in terms of growth. And what does that look like? Well, our linear brains kind of understand linear concepts like it's 10 meters to that wall or 30 meters to the end of the auditorium. And therefore, when you start thinking about things doubling every year, it's a very hard concept to understand. So I think this is a very good analogy. Imagine you're in this stadium and you're sitting right at the back at the top in the very cheap seats. And somebody in a little white coat walks onto the center field and puts one drop of water on the pitch. Now that drop of water is a magic drop of water, so it's going to grow exponentially. In this case, rather than every year, it's going to double in size every minute. How long would you have before at the very top at the back you actually drowned from all the water in the thing? Our linear brains tend to think, well, days, months, years. But in fact, the real answer is 49 minutes because the drop of water is doubling every minute, and in 49 minutes, you're dead. But the interesting thing is that even at 45 minutes, the stadium is 93% empty. So that when you're in an exponential curve, a lot of the time, the growth is happening, in this case, under the grass, and you can't see it happening, and it seems to be happening very slowly, and then suddenly at the last minute, it fills up. And that's how technology is growing today. And that's why some of the things which I'm about to explain, although they might seem arcane and very hard, very difficult to believe, are very likely to happen. Basically, the singularity is the time which is predicted to be about 2045. So a lot of us will still be in this room will still be alive then. It's the time when the machines to take over from man, take over running from the world. So they'll be so more powerful than us that they actually become sentient and decide that they're going to take over. That might sound far-fetched, but there's a lot of people who are working in artificial intelligence today who believe that is true. And at the point the machines take over, or are that powerful, there's a few scenarios which may occur, and nobody really knows that, because how do you understand a being which is 1 billion times more powerful than the most powerful computer today? Just to put that phrase into context, if computer technology carried on growing for the next 25 years at the same speed as it's been growing for the last 25 years, the phone as we know it today, the portable computer, will be 10,000, or 1/10,000th as small, so about the size of a blood cell, and 1 billion times more powerful. And that's just based on the last 25 years. If you account for exponential growth, who knows what it's going to be like. So what will happen as a result of these machines which are so powerful? Well, one of which is the sort of transhumanity idea, where we merge with machines in some way. We enhance our brains through technology, we advance our bodies through our technology, and we become essentially humanity too, which is a combination of machine and man, hopefully creating great things together. Obviously, I don't think it's going to look like that, but just illustrates the point. The other scenario is that we beam ourselves up to the clouds. We basically digitize our brains. Our brains are organic computers. We don't quite know how they work yet, but we're quite close to understanding that. We do know that it's all based on electrical impulses. And if they're electrical impulses, the theory is they could be digitized, and we beam ourselves up into the cloud and live in a sort of virtual world. Obviously much more convincing than, say, Second Life is today, but a sort of virtual world which, for all we know, we might be living in right this moment, but it'll be indistinguishable from the real world. Now, a lot of people get quite scared at that point and say, well, you know, how do we know that this is going to be a good thing? Should we stop this technology? The first thing to say is that, well, it's pretty unstoppable, because even if in the West we decided actually this is a dangerous thing, we should stop artificial intelligence research, maybe the Chinese will do it anyway. So you can't stop this. This is like a war, an escalation of a war. But most people say when you talk to them about the concerns is that don't worry, we'll program the computer, in this case with Asimov's 3 laws that basically a machine can't hurt us. It's got to look after us properly and respect us and all that kind of thing. Well, if you imagine something like 1 billion times greater in terms of intelligence and computing power, would it actually respect us who are such inferior beings at the time? I don't know. And the point is nobody else does. But the people who sort of hawk this vision around are saying, well, but it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be like heaven. We're going to be able to create our own heaven and live happily ever after. There will be no wars because there'll be no need for wars. There won't be any territory. There won't be any possessions, etc. You can have anything you want in this fantastic place. And in any case, the computer wouldn't be allowed to sanction wars. No famine anymore. It's a time of post-scarcity economy. You can have anything you want, meet anybody you want, eat anything you want. There would be no terrorism. And interestingly, no work unless you wanted it, because there's no need to produce anything anymore. End of death, immortality, should be around, if you manage to survive to 2045, you won't die. And there's also the possibility these days they're talking about reanimating dead people, so you could actually be surrounded by your ancestors. Sorry, not your ancestors, but also the previous generations. If you can get hold of their DNA, you can resequence it and recreate them. But there's an interesting corollary of this. This is a book written many years ago by Julian Barnes called The History of the World in 10.5 Chapters. And he wasn't really thinking about technology, but he was thinking about some kind of afterlife where he died and went to, and the first day he was there, he was in bed and a beautiful nurse woke him up and said, "What would you like to do today?" And he said, "Oh, well, I think I'd like to play golf." So they take him to St Andrews and he plays the best game of golf he's ever played in his life. Great day, has a lovely dinner, goes to bed. The next day he goes back to St Andrews again because it's his favourite course, and he goes a little bit better until eventually, after a few months, he's actually getting a hole-in-one in every single thing. So he goes and plays other courses. He meets lots of people he's always wanted to meet. He has dinner with them. He has sex with lots of people he's always admired. And it goes on. And eventually the nurse comes in and says, "What would you like to do today?" And he says, "Can I die?" Because he's done everything he's ever wanted to do. So maybe there's a point to death. We saw a clip in the augmented reality thing about another version of what might happen, which is the Terminator, where you have Skynet being a sentient machine, deciding to wipe out humanity. That's certainly a possibility. But one of the other scenarios is that the machines, which are far, far superior to us, might look to us and say, well, when you were in charge of inferior stuff like, say, farm animals, how did you treat them? And the answer is kind of not very well. But if they take that as a precedent of how they should treat us, maybe the future won't be quite so nice. So basically, the scenario here is that we don't really know what's going to happen about this, but one of these scenarios probably will come true. And I would urge you to think about it and engage with other people about it, and actually start talking to some of the people who are making this happen in the artificial intelligence world. I love engineers, and some of my best friends are engineers, but I don't think they should be the ones who should always decide what's going to happen next. And I think the other thing, which a guy by the name of Hugo de Garis describes very well, is his theory is that before this can happen, there will be a giga war where 1 billion people will die. And it'll be the old established world against the people who want the new established world to come in. The old established world being the major world religions, the politicians, the monarchy, the big businesses, the rich, against everybody else, mainly the technologists. And there'll be a fantastically big war. A lot of people will be killed before we can get to the promised land of singularity and artificial intelligence. So I would repeat that these things are predicted to happen within your lifetime. So I would urge you, if you don't know a lot about this subject, to find out a lot more about it, because it's definitely going to affect you and your children and indeed the future of the whole of mankind. So that's all I've got to say today. You can follow me on Twitter or read my blog, and happy to take questions or have a chat with you afterwards and carry on the conversation. Thank you very much. Any questions? Or?
Do you have any questions? Okay, it's still morning after a long night.
Okay, well, looks like I'll see you in the break. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Russell. Oh, wait. We have a present for you.
What are we doing?
It's a very typical present. Thank you. This bread is called chapela, and it's a very typical present here in the Basque Country as a sign for recognition or tribute. So
thank you very much.
we hope you like it.
Oh. Yep, great. Thank you very much.
Please, an applause.
Thank you. Thanks. How do you wear it? Like that or like?